You ever look at your life at 7:30 in the morning and think, wait, is this it? Same alarm, same tired body, same rush, same coffee, same train, same desk, same stress, same promise that one day it'll all feel worth it, and then 4 p.m. hits, you're drained. By 11:30 p.m., you're lying in bed knowing tomorrow is basically the same movie with the same scenes and the same ending. A lot of people call that adulthood. I think a lot of people are just trapped, and the worst part is not even that the routine is hard. The worst part is that it quietly convinces you this is normal forever, that this is just how life works. Work, pay bills, recover a little, repeat, week after week, year after year. Here's the truth that hit me hard. Most people are not stuck because they're lazy. They're stuck because their money system keeps them stuck. Their habits keep them stuck. Their lifestyle keeps them stuck. Their income depends on them showing up every single day, and the moment they stop, the machine stops. That's why this video matters, because the financial way out is not motivation. It's not some magical side hustle. It's not manifesting abundance. It's not watching one productivity video and suddenly becoming a different person. It's a series of quiet money decisions that slowly create breathing room, then margin, then options, then freedom, not fake freedom, real freedom. The kind where your life stops feeling like a loop. And no, I'm not going to tell you to just start a business and everything changes. Come on, that's not useful. Most people hearing that already have a job, already feel tired, already feel behind, and already feel like everyone online is pretending it's easier than it is. So let's do this properly. I'm going to walk you through the financial way out that actually works, not the glamorous version, the version that helps a regular person stop living the same day over and over, the version that starts boring and ends powerful. And honestly, that's the part social media doesn't show. Freedom is usually built through boring decisions repeated for a long time. That sounds unsexy. I know. But boring is what works. Because if your mornings feel heavy, if your afternoons feel meaningless, and if your nights feel like recovery for a life you don't fully enjoy, then the answer is not just emotional, it's structural. Something in your money life has to change. Most people think they need a bigger salary to escape the loop. Sometimes they do. But very often what they actually need first is a different system. Because more income with the same habits usually creates a more expensive trap. That's why there are people making good money who still feel financially suffocated. Nicer apartment, bigger car payment, more subscriptions, better restaurants, better clothes, same anxiety, same dependence, same feeling that they can't stop. They upgraded the cage. That's all they did. And if we're being honest, a lot of people never notice this happening. They think they're progressing because they're spending at a higher level. But internally, their life is still owned by the calendar, the paycheck, and the next bill. The financial way out starts when you stop using money to decorate your routine and start using money to escape it. That is a completely different mindset. So before I give you the way out, let me explain the actual problem. The problem is not just low savings. The problem is not just debt. The problem is not just inflation. The real problem is that most people build a life that requires constant performance just to maintain itself. Read that again. They build a life that can only survive if they keep working at the same speed, with the same energy, under the same conditions, with no major disruption. That means one bad month feels terrifying. One job loss feels catastrophic. One health issue feels financially dangerous. One surprise expense knocks everything off balance. And when life feels that fragile, of course every day starts to feel the same. You don't have room to experiment. You don't have room to breathe. You don't have room to think long term. You're not designing a life. You're maintaining one. That's the treadmill. And the treadmill gets worse because of what I call silent drains. These are normal-looking expenses and behaviors that don't seem dramatic by themselves, But together they steal your flexibility, not just your money. Your flexibility, that's important. Because when people say they want out, what they usually mean is they want options. They want to be able to say no, no to toxic work, no to bad hours, no to panic, no to staying in the same place just because bills say they have to. Options come from financial margin, and financial margin gets destroyed by silent drains. The car payment that feels normal, the food waste that feels harmless, the little purchases that feel deserved, the lifestyle upgrades that feel earned, the impulse spending that feels small, the routine convenience that feels necessary. None of these things look like a prison when you buy them, but together they create one. And once that prison becomes your normal life, every day starts to resemble every other day. Wake up, commute, cope, spend a little to feel better, come home tired, distract yourself, sleep, repeat. That's not just a schedule problem, that's a financial architecture problem. So what's the actual way out? It happens in stages, not one giant leap, not one heroic moment. Stages. First, you reduce the cost of your current life. Second, you increase the gap between what you earn and what you spend. Third, you turn that gap into assets, buffers, and optionality. Fourth, you build income streams that aren't fully tied to your daily labor. That's it. That's the path. Not sexy, not instant, but real. And to make this practical, let me show you 3 examples of how people stay trapped without realizing it. Because once you can see the trap clearly, the way out gets a lot easier to understand. Example 1 is the person who earns decent money but spends like they're trying to prove something. This person looks fine from the outside, maybe even impressive. Newer car, nice phone, branded clothes, delivery food, weekend spending, a few subscriptions they barely use, random online purchases showing up at the door, little upgrades everywhere. Nothing looks insane individually. That's why it's dangerous. But when you add it all up, their life becomes expensive to maintain, which means they need their job more than they think, which means they tolerate more than they should, which means their freedom gets smaller every year while their lifestyle looks better every year. That's a bad trade. And a lot of people make it. They confuse visible comfort with actual security. They think because the outside looks polished, the inside must be stable. Not necessarily. A polished life can still be financially fragile, and if you're financially fragile, your routine owns you. Example 2 is the person who saves a little but only after everything else is paid. This sounds responsible. It even sounds mature. I'll handle my bills, cover my life, enjoy a few things, and then whatever's left I'll save. The issue is that for most people, there's never much left. Because spending expands, it always does. Life conveniently absorbs available money. Something comes up. Something feels deserved. Something feels urgent. Something feels small enough not to matter. And then months pass, years pass. They're working hard. They're technically trying. But their savings barely move. So emotionally, they never leave survival mode. Even if income rises a little, they don't feel freer. They just feel temporarily less stressed. That's not the same thing. Less stressed is not free. Example 3 is the person who believes the only way out is a dramatic breakthrough. This is the person waiting for the big thing, the perfect business idea, the huge raise, the viral channel, the lucky investment, the giant life pivot. And while they wait for the dramatic thing, they ignore the boring changes that would actually improve their position immediately. They keep the bad habits. They keep the high-friction life. They keep the same spending. They keep the same dependence on one paycheck. They keep outsourcing convenience. They keep buying temporary relief. Then they wonder why nothing changes. Well, because they're waiting for fireworks when the real answer is plumbing. You don't fix a trapped life with hype. You fix it with structure. And that brings me to the part people actually came here for. What is the financial way out that actually works? Here it is. It starts with accepting one uncomfortable truth. Freedom is usually built before it is felt, meaning for a while your life may look almost the same from the outside. Same job, same apartment, same mornings, same responsibilities. But underneath the machine is changing. That's the phase most people quit in because it doesn't feel dramatic enough. But that phase is everything. So let me walk you through the real step-by-step path. Step 1. Lower the burn rate of your life. If your current lifestyle consumes nearly everything you make, you do not have a freedom problem. You have a burn rate problem. Your life costs too much to support. That doesn't automatically mean you're reckless. Sometimes it's just drift. Little upgrades over time, little comforts, little habits, little conveniences. But whatever the cause, the effect is the same. You need too much money each month just to stay in place. That means your first goal is not looking richer. Your first goal is making your life cheaper to operate. This is where a lot of people resist because it feels like going backwards. But it's only backwards if your goal is appearance. If your goal is freedom, lower fixed costs, or forward movement, so what does this actually mean? It means drive the older car longer. It means stop treating food like entertainment every day. It means cut recurring expenses that add no real value. It means reduce convenience spending. It means stop buying tiny emotional rewards every time life feels hard. It means remove the expenses that quietly force you to keep running. The reason this matters so much is simple. Every dollar you no longer need each month is a dollar of freedom, not theoretical freedom, real freedom. Because when your monthly life gets cheaper, your dependence decreases. And when dependence decreases, stress begins to loosen. That's the first crack in the loop. Step 2. Create immediate margin. Once your life costs less, you need a gap. A visible growing gap between what comes in and what goes out. That gap is where your new life comes from. No gap, no options. No gap, no savings. No gap, no investing. No gap, no ability to leave bad situations. No gap, no future. So this is the point where you stop saying, I hope I save this month, and start deciding where the gap goes before the month begins. That means paying yourself first. Not because it sounds smart, because it changes behavior. When savings happen last, life eats the money. When savings happen first, life adapts. That's huge. You want the default direction of your money to be towards safety and ownership, not random spending. Even if it starts small, the order matters. Order changes outcome. And once you feel that gap starting to build, even a modest amount, something psychological changes. You stop feeling like every dollar is already spoken for. You stop feeling like you're 1 week away from chaos. You start feeling, okay, maybe I'm not trapped forever. That emotional shift matters more than people realize, because hopeless people make short-term decisions. People with margin start thinking long-term. Step 3. Build your buffer before you build your fantasy. A lot of people want passive income before they have stability. That sounds exciting, but it's backwards. If your finances are shaky, every attempt to build something extra will feel desperate. And desperate people tend to make bad money decisions. They chase speed. They force outcomes. They buy courses they don't need. They gamble emotionally. They quit too early because pressure is too high. You need a buffer, cash, breathing room, emergency money, something that makes life less fragile. Why? Because a buffer does two things. First, it protects you from disruption. Second, it changes your posture. You don't think the same way when you have 2 weeks of safety versus 6 months of safety. With no buffer, every inconvenience feels threatening. With a buffer, you become calmer. more rational, more patient. That patience is a massive financial advantage. It lets you say no to bad offers. It lets you avoid panic selling. It lets you survive a rough season. It lets you build carefully instead of reactively. So before you obsess over making money in your sleep, ask yourself a more useful question. If something went wrong next month, how exposed am I really? If the answer is very exposed, then your next move is not flashy. It's building a cash floor under your life. That might sound less exciting than starting a side business, but a stable base makes everything above it stronger. Step 4, stop funding your cage with convenience. This one is sneaky. A huge amount of money disappears not on luxury but on convenience. Convenience coffee, convenience lunch, convenience delivery, convenience shopping, convenience subscriptions, convenience transportation, convenience everything. And look, I get it. When you're tired, convenience feels like relief. But for a lot of people, convenience has become a permanent tax on exhaustion. They're tired because life is expensive, and life is more expensive because they're tired. That loop will keep you stuck for years. So one of the smartest things you can do is start reclaiming the tasks you outsourced by habit. Make food at home more often, bring coffee from home, shop with a list, batch your errands. Stop using your card to buy tiny moments of emotional rescue, because that's often what's happening. It's not about the coffee, it's not about the snack, it's not about the app, it's about wanting a little relief. But if your relief strategy is spend, 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 your future keeps paying for your present mood. That's not freedom, that's self-soothing with interest. And yes, I know that sounds harsh, but it's true. The people who escape the loop usually become a little more boring for a while. They stop needing life to constantly entertain them. They get more intentional, more repetitive, less impulsive. And weirdly enough, that boring season buys them a much less boring future. Step 5. Make your routine cheaper and your progress automatic. This is where systems beat motivation, because motivation is inconsistent. You know that, I know that, everybody knows that. If your financial improvement depends on feeling disciplined every day, you're making it harder than it needs to be. You want automation, automatic transfers after payday, automatic investing, automatic bill timing, automatic savings buckets. You want your good decisions to happen even when your energy is low. That's how adults win with money, by the way. Not by being perfect, by being structured. A lot of people imagine financially strong people as hyper-disciplined every day. Some are. But many are just running better systems. That's what you want. Less drama, more default. Because the more financial decisions you systematize, the less room there is for emotional sabotage. You remove the daily argument with yourself. And when the daily argument disappears, progress becomes less exhausting. Step 6. Use raises to create escape velocity, not lifestyle inflation. This is one of the biggest turning points. When most people earn more, they immediately let life expand. Slightly nicer place, slightly nicer car, slightly nicer habits, slightly more relaxed spending, and then suddenly the raise is gone. That is one of the saddest patterns in modern life. More income arrives, but freedom doesn't. Why? Because the extra money got assigned to a more expensive version of the same routine. Don't do that. When your income rises, keep your life still for as long as you can. Let the raise go to savings, let it go to investing, let it go to debt reduction, let it go to your runway. That's how income turns into leverage instead of decoration. You don't need every raise to improve your visible life immediately. Sometimes the smartest thing a raise can do is make your future less dependent. That's real progress. Step 7. Build one income stream outside your job. Now we're getting to the part people often skip to first. Side income, extra income, eventually passive income. But notice the order here. We handled the foundation first. That matters. Because now when you start building outside income, you're doing it from a stronger position. You're not trying to save your life in 30 days. You're building a second engine carefully. That changes everything. And no, your second income stream does not need to be complicated. Please don't make it complicated. People get stuck because they think they need some genius business model. You don't. You need something useful, repeatable, and realistic. A skill-based service, a simple digital product, a tiny content brand, a freelance offer, a niche template, a paid guide, a local service people already need. The goal is not to look impressive. The goal is to create income that can exist beyond your hourly presence. At first, that income may still be active. That's okay. You're not jumping straight into full passivity. You're graduating into leverage. That's how it works in real life. For example, maybe you start by freelancing with a skill you already have. Then you notice clients keep asking the same questions. So you turn your process into a template. Then you sell the template. Then you make a guide that explains how to use it. Then you create content that attracts more people to it. See what happened there? You started active. Then you added layers that scale better. That's the real path to passive-ish income for most people. Not magic, layers. And that should honestly relieve you, because it means you don't need to become a different person overnight. You just need to start stacking useful things. Step 8. Turn free time into asset time. This one changes lives when people finally get it. Most people spend their limited free time recovering, consuming, scrolling, watching, shopping, and telling themselves they're too tired to build anything. Sometimes that's fair. Life is heavy. But if every free hour disappears into consumption, then the future has no new engine forming. Nothing is being built, no assets, no skills, no products, no audience, no ownership. So one of the biggest shifts you can make is this. Stop asking only how to rest after work. Start asking how to convert some of your off hours into assets. Not all of them. You're not a machine, but some. Even 5 focused hours per week can become meaningful if those hours produce something useful over and over. A library of content, a product, a service system, a newsletter, a resource, an educational offer, a small storefront, a portfolio. These things are slow at first. That's normal. The beginning is embarrassingly quiet. Hardly anyone cares. Results barely show. Progress looks microscopic, but that's exactly why so few people do it long enough. They want immediate validation. They want proof now. They want visible momentum. Instead, they get crickets. And the people who can tolerate that boring beginning are the ones who eventually build something that gives them options. Step 9. Separate identity from consumption. This sounds philosophical, but it's actually very practical. A lot of people stay broke because spending has become part of their identity, their taste, their image, their reward system, their self-expression, their coping strategy, their social signal. So every attempt to spend less feels personal. It feels like shrinking. It feels like becoming less interesting. That's a problem. Because if you need spending to feel like yourself, financial freedom will always feel emotionally expensive. At some point, you have to decide that your future matters more than your performance. You do not need to look rich, trendy, upgraded, or effortlessly successful all the time. You need ownership. You need options. You need peace. That means learning to be a little less impressed by consumption, especially your own. It means finding confidence in restraint. That's powerful, and it's rare. Step 10. Understand what passive income really is. This is the misunderstanding that ruins a lot of people. Passive income is not money from nowhere. It is money from assets, systems, and work that continue creating value after the initial effort. Sometimes that's investing, Sometimes it's content, sometimes it's digital products, sometimes it's rental income, sometimes it's licensing, sometimes it's royalties, sometimes it's an automated business with low maintenance. But in almost every case, passive income begins with active effort, patient setup, and consistency, which means the person most likely to build passive income is not the most excited person. It's the most patient person, the one willing to spend evenings building something small, the one willing to improve boring systems, the one willing to learn before earning, the one willing to look unimpressive during the setup phase. That's why the financial way out actually works, because it doesn't rely on hype. It relies on sequence, lower costs, create margin, build buffer, systematize progress, use raises wisely, build a second income stream, convert free time into assets, let assets become future income. That is how people slowly stop living the same day forever, not overnight, but undeniably. Now let me make this even more concrete, because some people hear this and think, okay, sounds good, but what does it look like in a real-life schedule? Fair question, so let's picture a normal person. They wake up at 7:30, they feel tired, they go to work, they come home, they eat, they scroll, they sleep. Their life feels repetitive because all of their energy goes into sustaining the present. There is no infrastructure for a different future, so here's how that changes. Week 1, they cut obvious leaks, food spending, impulse shopping, subscriptions, convenience spending, random extras. They create a basic budget with one mission, open margin. Week 2, they automate saving and start building an emergency buffer, even if it begins small. They stop waiting to see what's left and decide first where money goes. Week 3, they choose one monetizable skill or interest, just one. No fantasy shopping, no 10-tab business model chaos. One thing, week 4, they create a simple offer or asset around it. A service, a guide, a template, a small piece of content, something real. Then they repeat. That repetition is where identity changes. That's where routine stops feeling like a prison and starts becoming a platform, because now the day job funds the transition instead of defining the whole life. That's a very different feeling. And yes, it takes time. Of course it takes time. But the good news is you do not need to wait for complete freedom to feel progress. Progress has emotional value early. The first month you don't panic at a surprise bill feels different. The first month your savings start moving feels different. The first time you earn even a small amount outside your job feels different. The first time you realize your life costs less than it used to feels different. That's when the loop begins to weaken. Let's talk about why this works so well, because I think once you understand the mechanics, it gets much easier to commit. The financial way out works because it attacks the exact things that make repeated living feel suffocating. It reduces pressure, it increases control, it creates time options, it creates psychological relief, it creates choice. And choice is really the thing most people are starving for, not just more money. Choice, the choice to rest without panic, the choice to leave a bad situation, the choice to work differently, the choice to say no, the choice to design a life instead of just enduring one. That's why this topic hits so deeply. People aren't only tired of routine, they're tired of feeling owned by it. So if you want the financial way out, you have to stop measuring progress only by external lifestyle upgrades and start measuring it by increased choice. That's the scoreboard. Does this decision increase my dependence or decrease it? Does this purchase make my life more flexible or less? Does this habit build ownership or just comfort? Does this raise create freedom or just a shinier version of the same obligation? Those are better questions, and once you start asking them, your behavior changes. Now, I also want to address something people feel but don't always say. A lot of people are not only financially stuck, they are emotionally attached to being rescued. They want the one move that changes everything fast, the one channel idea, the one stock, the one hustle, the one app, the one deal. And look, I get the appeal. When you're exhausted by repetition, speed sounds romantic. But most lasting financial escape is anti-romantic. It's repetitive, it's methodical. It's almost annoyingly reasonable, and that's exactly why it works. Because reasonable systems survive moods, reasonable systems survive bad weeks, reasonable systems survive imperfect people. You do not need a perfect personality to build freedom. You need a reliable process. That should encourage you, seriously. Because it means the path out is not reserved for hyper-energetic entrepreneurs or finance nerds with spreadsheets open 24 hours a day. It's available to normal people willing to become a little more intentional. Now let's get even more practical. If I were starting from zero and my life felt painfully repetitive, here is exactly how I would think. First, I would stop trying to look successful while feeling trapped. That performance is expensive. I would accept that for a season my life might look simpler, quieter, and less impressive. Fine. That season is not failure, it is repositioning. Second, I would figure out the minimum monthly cost of a decent life. Not a fantasy life, a decent one. Rent, food, transport, utilities, essentials, a little breathing room. Why? Because you need to know the number you're actually trying to beat. A lot of people feel overwhelmed because they're fighting a vague problem. Vague problems create vague solutions. Specific numbers create strategy. If your decent life costs $4,000 a month, that matters. If you can lower it to $3,300 without destroying your quality of life, that matters even more. You just made freedom cheaper. That is a huge win. Third, I would build an anti-chaos fund before chasing complexity. 3 to 6 months of core expenses is not a sexy milestone, but it turns life down from emergency volume to manageable volume, and that lower anxiety level improves decision-making in a way most people underestimate. Fourth, I would choose one lane for extra income based on existing advantage. This is crucial. Not what looks coolest, not what people online brag about. Existing advantage. What do you already know? What can you already do better than average? What problem can you already help with? What do people already ask you about? That's your best starting point. The easiest money is usually closer to your current skills than your fantasies. Fifth, I would make the offer small and ugly before making it beautiful. People waste months polishing ideas that have never been tested. Don't do that. Start simple. If it's a service, get one client. If it's a template, sell one version. If it's a guide, publish one useful resource. If it's content, make 10 honest pieces instead of one perfect launch. You want evidence, not aesthetics. Evidence creates momentum. Sixth, I would protect the money from the extra income stream instead of absorbing it into lifestyle. This is where people sabotage themselves. They start making extra money and suddenly they relax the budget, spend more, and lose the compounding effect. No. The early money from your extra stream is not for flexing. It is for escape velocity. It strengthens the buffer. It buys assets. It funds tools. It creates runway. Treat that money like reinforcements, not celebration. Seventh, I would build around repeatability. One-off wins are exciting, but repeatable systems change lives. Can this offer be delivered again? Can this product be sold again? Can this audience be reached again? Can this process work without me reinventing everything every week? Repeatability is where income stops being random and starts becoming dependable. And dependable is what you need if you're trying to escape the loop. Because a random lucky month doesn't create peace, a repeatable system does. Eighth, I would deliberately consume less fantasy content about wealth. That might sound weird in a finance video, but hear me out. A lot of people are overdosing on money content that creates unrealistic timelines, so they start feeling behind even when they're making real progress. That's dangerous. You do not need constant exposure to people claiming they made 10 grand in a weekend with some absurd strategy. You need grounded examples that make you more patient, more practical, and more focused. Watch content that helps you build, not content that makes you feel inadequate for building slowly. That difference matters. Now let's talk about the emotional side of all this, because it matters more than spreadsheets alone. When your life has felt repetitive for a long time, sometimes you start craving dramatic change because subtle progress feels too small. I understand that. But subtle progress is usually the beginning of real change. The first time your account balance doesn't scare you. The first time you say no to something because you can. The first time you go a month without mindless purchases. The first time you build something after work instead of collapsing into distraction. The first time an extra $100 comes in from something you created. Those moments may look tiny to other people. They are not tiny. They are evidence that your life is no longer fully dependent on the old script, and once you have evidence, hope becomes rational. That's a big deal. Hope without evidence is just emotion. Hope with evidence becomes strategy. That's what you want, a life where progress is measurable and hope is earned. Now, some of you watching this are probably thinking, okay, but what if I'm already exhausted? What if I barely have the energy for my normal day? That's real. So let me be clear. I am not telling you to become a hustle robot. I'm telling you to stop spending your limited energy in ways that keep you dependent. That's different. Sometimes the first improvement is not doing more, it's leaking less money, leaking less time, leaking less attention, leaking less energy into habits that buy relief but sell your future. Once the leaks slow down, you often discover you had more capacity than you thought. It was just being drained constantly. This is also why simplifying your life matters so much. Eat simpler, shop simpler, dress simpler, drive simpler, plan simpler. A simpler life is easier to finance and easier to think inside. That mental clarity is underrated. When every category of your life is noisy, the future feels harder to build. When life becomes cleaner and more structured, it's easier to act consistently. And consistent action is what slowly breaks the same life every day feeling. Let me also say this: your job is not the enemy. A lot of people watch videos like this and think the answer is to escape employment immediately. Not necessarily. A job can be a great tool. The issue is not having a job. The issue is having only one source of financial support, no buffer, high expenses, and no assets growing in the background. That combination is what feels suffocating. So instead of hating the job, use it. Let it fund your transition. Let it stabilize your base. Let it buy time while you quietly build other things. That mindset is calmer and more effective than rage quitting your way into chaos. And here's another thing nobody says enough. You do not need to love the process every day. Seriously, you just need to respect it enough to keep going. Some days it will feel slow. Some days it will feel unfair. Some days it will feel like everyone else is getting ahead faster. Fine, stay with the process. Because the people who eventually gain freedom are often not the most brilliant. They're the ones who kept stacking boring advantages while others chase stimulation. That's the whole game. Quiet advantages, lower costs, higher margin, less fragility, more savings, better systems, extra income, assets, optionality. That sequence doesn't just improve your bank account, it changes your internal life. You stop waking up with the same helplessness. You stop ending every day feeling like you ran hard but got nowhere. you start feeling direction. And direction is powerful. Even before full freedom arrives, direction makes life feel different. Now let's put all of this into one clear frame. If you are tired of living the same life every day, the financial way out is not to buy more comfort inside the loop. It is to slowly become less dependent on the loop. That means reducing the cost of your life, protecting more of what you earn, building a buffer, automating good decisions, rejecting lifestyle creep, using free time to build assets, creating a second source of income, letting that second source evolve toward the leverage, and repeating long enough for the structure of your life to actually change. That's the real way out, not instant, not cinematic, but real. And honestly, real is better, because fake shortcuts keep people stuck. Real systems set them free. So let's recap this in the simplest possible way. If your life feels like the same day on repeat, don't just ask how to feel better inside that routine. Ask how to become less financially dependent on that routine. That's the question that changes everything. The answer is not one giant move, it's a sequence. Make your life cheaper to run. Open margin between income and spending. Build a cash buffer. Automate your progress. Stop upgrading your cage every time income rises. Start building one extra stream of income. Use your off hours to create assets instead of only consuming relief. Protect the money that gives you leverage. Repeat until your life begins to widen. That's it. That's the financial way out that actually works. And yes, it sounds less exciting than most of what you hear online. It doesn't promise you overnight freedom. It doesn't tell you that quitting your job next month is realistic. It doesn't pretend everyone can become rich instantly from one clever move, but it does something better. It gives you a path that normal people can actually follow, and I think that matters more, because what most people need is not more hype. They need a way to stop feeling trapped, a way to stop feeling like every day is pre-written, a way to stop feeling like their entire future depends on making it to the next paycheck. A way to move from survival into strategy. That shift is the beginning of freedom. So if I were talking to one person right now, just one, and they said, "Carl, I'm exhausted. I'm tired of living like this. Where do I begin?" I would say this. Begin by making your current life lighter, not more impressive. Lighter. Cut the things that own you. Reduce the expenses that force you into constant obedience. Stop using spending as a reward for enduring a life you want to leave. Build a little room. Protect it. Then use that room to build something that belongs to you. A skill, a product, a service, a tiny brand, a useful asset, something. It does not need to be massive. It needs to exist. Because the moment you begin creating assets instead of only consuming your income, your life is no longer moving in only one direction. That matters. And from there, be patient enough to let it compound. I really mean that. Be patient, not passive. Patient. There's a difference. Passive waits and hopes. Patient builds and repeats. That's who wins. The person willing to live a little differently now so they can live very differently later. The person willing to look ordinary while building uncommon freedom. The person willing to stop performing wealth and start constructing independence. That person eventually wakes up in a life that no longer feels like a copy-paste version of yesterday. And that is the whole point. Not to become flashy, not to impress strangers, not to collect status symbols, to get your life back, to buy your time back, to create enough financial stability that your choices become real again. That's what money is supposed to do, not trap you, free you. And if you remember nothing else from this video, remember this. Every boring financial habit that lowers dependence is a step away from the loop. Every dollar of margin is a vote for your future. Every asset you build is a piece of your freedom. Every time you choose ownership over appearance, you weaken the routine that used to control you. That is how ordinary people build extraordinary flexibility, quietly, repeatedly, intentionally. So, no, the way out is not glamorous, but it works. And in the long run, working beats glamorous every single time. Because glamorous can still leave you broke, anxious, and dependent. Working gives you options. Working gives you peace. Working gives you a future that doesn't look exactly like the present. That's the real upgrade, not a shinier lifestyle, a freer life. If this video helped you see the path more clearly, subscribe, because that's what this channel is about. Real money moves that create real freedom. And tell me in the comments, what's the one financial change you know would make your life feel less like the same day on repeat?